guest, Spike Cohen.
Porcfest 2024. Guys, if you ever feel like you're under pressure, just remember, you didn't have to speak after Ron Paul. No pressure at all, of course. I do want to say something about Dr. Paul. How many people here were brought to the Liberty Movement by Ron Paul? Yeah. You'll notice I had my hand raised too. Who here was young when we did that? Yeah, me too. You'll notice I'm not young anymore, and a lot of the people who raise their hand also aren't young. In fact, I'm starting to really think we need to really consider the kind of world we're leaving behind for Dr. Paul. No, but seriously, I still meet people today in their teens and 20s who say that Dr. Paul brought them to the Liberty Movement. So we definitely owe that man a tremendous debt of gratitude. So, you can 100%. This is my first Porcfest, and I gotta say, I wish I had been coming here all along, guys. This is absolutely amazing. I have made a point of walking up and down just about the entire thing since I've been here, and I am seeing people from all different walks of life, all over the country. In fact, people from other countries as well. Got one right there. And everyone's doing different types of things. Some people are running for office. Some people are involved in libertarian concentration in the Liberty Movement here in New Hampshire. Some people are doing similar efforts in other states. Some people are introducing new technologies and new innovations to bring more freedom. Some people are promoting things like homeschooling co-ops and all sorts of incredible stuff, but they all are unified under the same thing. We are all working to make ourselves, our loved ones, and our communities freer tomorrow than they are today. And I want to applaud you for that, because that is incredible. That is great that you were doing that. In one word, what would you say? And I'll ask you, if you can put it into one or two words, what does liberty mean to you? What does libertarianism mean to you?
Self-ownership.
Self-ownership, respect, justice, property rights, consent, truth, voluntary. These all boil down to the same thing. We want to be free. And our ideas make the most sense. That's why we agree with them, because we're the smartest people and we know that we're right. And the reality is, there's only, our ideas make the most sense when they're implemented, they do the most good, and we see the nasty, terrible alternative that happens with the status quo when they don't do libertarianism. And there's only one thing in the way of us spreading liberty here and around the globe. It's just a small little thing. Other people. It's this one just little thing. It's almost not even worth mentioning. No, the reality is most people aren't libertarian yet. Now, many of them will never be libertarian. And they believe the same nonsense that a lot of us used to believe at some point. They believe that the problem is freedom, or that we're too free, or too much freedom is going to cause problems. They believe that one half of the ruling class is creating all the issues, and the only one that can save us from them are the other half of the ruling class. They believe all sorts of nonsense, and the reality is, because they're the majority, even though their way doesn't make sense, their way goes. So what do we do when we deal with people who are just so wrong? How do we deal with other people? Well, I think it's very clear. We tell them they're wrong, we argue with them on the internet, and then we make memes about how stupid they are. Thank you so much. Thank you. No, that concerns me how many of you applauded that. Look, I like catharsis as much as the next guy, and there are plenty of memes I made that maybe didn't help spread liberty, but they certainly made me feel better about the argument I just had. But the reality is that's not what brings people here. I'm going to actually prove that right now. How many people here used to be a statist? Yeah, that's most. Again, you'll notice my hand is raised. That's most of us. I think we very often, we look at many other of the so-called normies out there, the public out there, and we go, oh look at what they're saying. They're never going to understand what we're trying to explain to them. I have presented them so many good arguments, and they're just not immediately adapting or adopting any of them. But the reality is, we used to say that stuff. Most of the people in here used to parrot the same nonsense. I was a neocon interventionist. I said stuff that I rarely hear other neocons say. That's how bad I was. I mean, I was a cringy neocon. But the reality is, someone was able to reach me with that message. Now, some people here are advocates of the libertarian concentration strategy. It's a great strategy. We need to get libertarians here. We need to get as many of us here, and we can make changes here. Some of us are more along the lines of trying to evangelize the liberty message. There is a false binary that you have to choose between those two. In fact, both of them work best together. You're not going to get a concentration of libertarians if you don't have libertarians. So you've got to get that message out there. And frankly, even if you evangelize to the world, if you don't get them concentrated into areas and make changes, you're not going to get your way either. So I don't think we should be arguing about that. I think what we should be doing is looking at what brings people to liberty. And I believe we have found a way to distill not just the message behind liberty, and the principles and the ethics behind liberty, but a way that we can move forward to liberty down into one word. Here is that word, respect. Case in point, who here is against respect? There's usually at least one edgy person who raises their hand, but even among, and there's some edgy people here, not even one of you said you were against it. But I'm going to go even further. In order for us to be here right now, just to get from our home to here, we had to come into relatively close contact with hundreds, thousands, maybe even tens of thousands of people. In fact, I probably had to come into relatively close contact with 50 to 60,000 people because I had to go to 3 different airports to get here. And at no point did any of us feel any sense of immediate impending danger on our way here. Even though almost everyone that we have had to be in close contact with just to get here, we had no idea who they were. They're total strangers. We'll probably never see them again. We have no idea what they value. We have no idea what their opinions are on things. We probably hate their opinions. If we heard it, we probably, listening to them one time, we probably say, well, I hope you don't vote. But regardless, we still had a reasonable expectation that we were going to get here safely. And they more than likely had a reasonable expectation that they were too, even though they don't know a thing about you, and here's why. Just about every single one of us has an intrinsic respect for every other person as an individual human being. We don't necessarily like that person or know anything about that person or agree with them on anything, and in fact, if we did know them, we'd probably hate them, or there's a good chance we hate them. But we still respect that they are individual human beings. And so there are just certain lines that we're not going to cross. It's the same reason why we don't step on a human being like we would step on an insect when we're walking down the road. It's because we recognize that this is a human being. And this is something we don't even often think about. Like, it's so intrinsic that it's not even something that has to be explained. You could talk to one of the kids here and say, I think that, when that a human being and another human being shouldn't hurt each other because they're people. And they go, well, yeah, because it's something that's intrinsic. The exceptions to that are sociopaths and psychopaths and criminals and politicians. But I repeat myself, but here's why that is. As intrinsic of that belief as that belief is, most of us here, almost all of us here, and just about everyone else, were conditioned from a very early age to set aside that expectation of human respect when it comes to the government. Now, what's the government? It's just people. It's people that have said, I'm with the government. But they're still just people. And in fact, those exact same people, when they're outside of their capacity as a government official, we still expect them to respect us. Like, let's say I'm a politician. Let's say I'm in government. I'm actually an elected official. Now, outside of that capacity, I'm just walking down the road wearing my regular clothes, and I walk up to one of you and I say, give me half of what's in your wallet right now, or I'm going to make your life miserable, and I might give some of it back to you if I think you need it. Now, are you going to say, okay, that sounds good, or no, that violates the social contract, or no, you're either going to fight me, or you're going to run away, or you're going to call for help from someone, or if you do comply with me, it'll be under duress. It'll be because you didn't want to get hurt, right? As, imposing and threatening as I am. You did it, if you did do it, it wasn't because you thought it was a good idea. But if I now put on a suit and I stand behind this podium as an elected official and I say, I have fantastic news for everyone. I am going to introduce a new program that is going to help so many of you. But if you need it, I'm not just going to give you money because you want it. It's only if you need it. Now, to pay for this plan, I'm going to introduce a new tax. We're going to have the same general reaction to that as we would to someone actually walking up and robbing us, because we get that scam for what it is. But the vast majority of people, whether or not they agree with that plan, whether or not they agree with that new tax, they're going to treat it differently, because that's not theft. That's government policy. It is that set aside of that expectation for human respect that allows tyranny to reign, because the vast majority of people don't see it for what it is. Now, what we are able to do by distilling it down to human respect is by reminding people of that intrinsic respect that we're supposed to have for one another. Now, many of you are doing this in all sorts of different ways. I've seen all sorts of incredible things that you guys are doing here. I can tell you about the way I'm doing it. And that's with my organization, You Are the Power. And here's what we do with You Are the Power. We find people that are being disrespected, and instead of just saying that this is a terrible thing, we come up with a call to action, and then we encourage people to join us on it. We don't talk to people about libertarian policy or philosophy or anything else. That is useful. Many of you are doing that, and that's a good thing you should be doing, but we're actually skipping that part. We're just bringing to people an example of someone whose life is ruined or being ruined by an out-of-control government. And instead of having a moral or ethical conversation with them about why that's happening, we give them a call to action to cyberbully those government officials until they back off and do the right thing. And then we give them another one. And then we give them another one and another one and another one. And in doing so, we aren't just demonstrating what it is we're about and what we're trying to stop. We're giving them an opportunity to adopt our principles and to echo them to their social circles and to those government officials. So before I argue with anyone or try to convince anyone of anything, I just bring them a cause that I already know they're going to agree with us on and want to fight on. And I turn them into active activists in the liberty movement before I even try to get them to adopt libertarianism. Now I can start talking to you about the stats and how we, have worked on well over 100 causes, and we've had something like an 85-90% success rate with those causes. And I can talk to you about how we've reached well over 100 million people with our causes and all of that. But I actually want to break it down into one example of what happened. There is a couple named Matt and Taki Hernandez. They're husband and wife. And they have 2 children, Emma and Aria. When Emma was a newborn, she started having swelling in one of her legs, and she was just fussy. And so they brought her to the pediatrician, who said, I think you should bring her to the hospital. Took her to the hospital. She had some blood work done, and she had an x-ray done. The x-ray found that she had some fracturing in her leg, and also had some old fracturing that was at various stages of healing. The blood work demonstrated that she more than likely had a chronic illness that was causing this to happen. So the child abuse pediatrician called it abuse. And they were informed that they weren't going to see their daughter. Then the police came to their house and saw, as they put it, that Aria, the older child, the toddler, lived in a fine home, and that everything seemed like they were in good order and that they were loving. So then they took Aria too, and they arrested Matt Hernandez for abuse. And as bond conditions for them to let him even seek bond to be able to get out and go back home, he had to agree to not talk to his wife or live in the same home with her or be within a certain number of feet of her until the criminal trial was over. They hadn't even indicted him yet. So not only did they steal their children. Not only did the state of Georgia steal their children, they forced them to legally be estranged from one another and threatened major harm against them if they even talked to each other. Now, both of them separately immediately went and tried to get the medical records because they knew that neither one of them had abused this kid. And they found out that they were going to have to fight in court to get the medical records. So they did. Several months later, and I believe thousands of dollars later, fighting in court to get the medical records of their own children, they finally got them, and immediately they saw that every bit of evidence, medical evidence that they had, showed that our Emma had one of 2 or 3 different chronic medical conditions that causes this, and that she needed immediate additional testing to find out what it was so they could start treating her, because some of these conditions are fatal. And they said, okay, great, let's go to court, and the judge will see this, and let us get our kids back, and we can start giving her the treatment, the lifelong treatment she's going to need. Instead, the family court judge refused to allow the medical evidence to be put into the court case. And she refused to allow the medical experts they hired to even give their testimony. And instead, she took the word of the so-called child abuse pediatrician who didn't even see Emma, who wasn't even familiar with the case, and who under testimony said, yeah, I mean, if there's a fracture involved, it's probably abuse. And when the attorney asked what the source of his knowledge of this so-called statistic that it was abuse was, he's going, oh, well, you can see this stuff on the internet. Yeah, the internet says that's probably abuse. They ordered for the children to be placed in foster care indefinitely with the possibility of them being put out for adoption. Now, when we first heard this case, we vetted it very heavily because I thought, there's no way that this is actually happening. Turned out that's exactly what was happening. And so we put it out there. We put it on all of our social media. We got it out to the public. Thousands of people started angrily emailing everyone involved, the child abuse pediatrician, the family court judge, the social work, the caseworker, the caseworker's supervisor, everyone down the line, even the head of DFACS. Everyone was getting angry emails and mentions on social media and phone calls, and pretty much any contact we could find, we put it out there so people could let them know firsthand what they thought of this. And then the other families started coming out of the blue from across the country, and we heard the same story over and over and over again. My kid was sick. They are fighting to let us never see them again. Some of them said we also aren't allowed to speak with our spouse or our significant other. We heard the same thing over and over again, and we vetted each and every cause and found out those ones were true too. And then we found out why this is happening. Under Title IV of the Social Security Act, the federal government pays not just these agencies, but the individuals that do the casework all the way down the line. The judge, the caseworker, the pediatrician, the foster care workers, all of them, as long as they call it abuse. And if they put the kids up for foster care, they get even more. And if they end up putting the kid up for adoption, they get even more. And if it turns out that the kid is ill, they get even more. So when these child abuse pediatricians see a kid in need of care, they don't think, wow, this child, this human being needs medical care. They think, cha-ching. All we have to do is destroy another family and traffic some more children, and we'll get even more money. Now, that is what it looks like when people are not being respected as individual human beings, because that doctor, that caseworker, that judge, everyone down the line getting this ridiculous perverse incentive funding to do this, every single one of them, they see that sick kid and they don't see a human being that needs help. They see money. They see a political opportunity. They see a funding opportunity for their agency. They see an opportunity, a political point to be able to say, oh, look at all these new abuse cases. We need even more personnel and even more money. If instead they looked at that kid and saw a kid, this would never happen. Now, we get that message out there, and not only are we getting the message out there and getting people to get involved and send those angry emails and everything else, but we're driving that message home. This wouldn't happen if they weren't being respected as individual human beings. And then we give them a link to a page on our website where they can contact all the contact information for all the officials involved. And we give them a wording template that they can use where it says the same thing. Respect these people as individual human beings. So now, not only are these folks getting involved with helping someone that they can actually connect with, and someone that they could see as themselves, as their neighbors or loved ones, but they're now echoing the message we just said. These are human beings, they should be respected as it. We are respect-filling these people. Before we ever talk about self-ownership or autonomy or property rights or individualism or any of that, we are getting them at its core, at the most intrinsic level, to adopt something they already believe. We should all respect each other as individual human beings, and they're applying it to the government. Now that's great for the liberty movement. That's great for my organization. That's great for anyone who wants to live in a freer future, to have more people in the movement and intrinsically believing it and adopting it and doing activism on it. Let me tell you what it did for that family. Those children are on their way back home. After months of basically blocking them from being able to defend themselves in court, where they were not just guilty until proven innocent, but guilty and not allowed to be proven innocent, that judge, Heather Knox, after getting thousands of angry emails and mentions and phone calls and text messages, for some miraculous, unrelated reason, she did a complete 180 and decided to order reunification and to say that these kids should definitely be on their way back home, and that she wishes she could drop the whole thing, but the criminal charges are still pending, and dismiss the Child Protective Services case. Just out of nowhere this happened. I'm sure it's not related to entire, thousands of people telling her to change her mind. That happened because of the work that we were doing. Those children are on their way back home. We are working on getting those charges dropped. And after nearly a year of not living together or seeing their kids, Matt and Tucky Hernandez are living back together as husband and wife, and they're able to see their children who are with family anytime they want with no restrictions. And soon they'll be back in that home where they belong. That is what it looks like when we get the public behind that idea that we all intrinsically believe in, that we all need to be respected as individual human beings, but then get them up to apply it consistently, including and especially to the government. That is the message that we should be spreading. However you want to word it, however you want to implement it, whatever idea you want to bring to the public, whatever your booth is about over there, it all comes down to the same thing. When we are respected as individual human beings, we are more prosperous, we are more harmonious, and we are happier. I call it the principle of human respect. I hope you agree with it. It's what we do at You Are the Power. I'd love to have you be a part of it. If you want to come to youarethepower.net, you can sign up today and become a member. We'd love to have you be a part of this. But however you do it, I just want you to remember, that is at the core of what we are doing, respect. And when that happens, when we get public officials to respect us, here in New Hampshire, across the country, across the world, we are freer tomorrow, the week after, and long after that. We are freer with each day, the more we are respected and the more we demand it. Keep fighting for liberty. I love every single one of you, and thank you.